5, 4, 3, 2. Wait for it to connect. What it do? This is your boy, our place to be, the place to be, a Street Star podcast. And we're here again, another Sunday for y'all for Sunday dinner. So today, we got X here, my man X, for my sister so dope, my girl Z. So today,
Good, we good. How you feeling?
Moody, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
We got a special guest that I can hear you. I can hear you. All right, there we go. We got a special joining us today. I feel as though when you're running for office, you're being elected by the people, and you're having the job for the people, and to be elected by the people, you be a people person. You have to be to walk in the streets with the people, and we have candidates that they say they walk the walk but don't talk, but they do enough. But you have some people that comes out there and they come from the gutter, they come from the people, where you and I come from, understand what we need. And today we have a special guest that's up. We have a gentleman that's running for the 40th District Delegate of Maryland. And that is, they're the ones basically help the laws here in Maryland. They're the ones that pretty much let us what we can do and what we can't do. They're the ones that pretty much know they the budget. They work along with the governor. They every January they do the Can you hear me? How you doing today, Mr. Ervin? How you doing?
All right. How are you, Al?
Hey, can you hear me? Can y'all hear me out there?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Me?
Can you hear me?
Testing.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Alf, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you both.
Now, how you doing today? Okay, yeah, that's how y'all doing today. Did y'all hear the? So you didn't hear the introduction?
I heard the introduction. I heard it.
Yeah, okay, I got you. For some reason we having a little bit of technical difficulties today, but I'm here today.
They're trying to stop me.
I wanted you to come and with a little bit of. Say that again.
The system's doing everything it can to keep me out.
We have a little audio problem. Hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. They're trying to work against us. They're trying to work. Going great all this time, and then all of a sudden now we having technical difficulties. But cut is all blowing out. I want you to go ahead. Let's go ahead a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Chris Ervin. I'm running for the House of Delegates in Maryland's 41st Legislative District, representing Baltimore City. I live in Northwest Baltimore in Howard Park. I'm the chairman of the board for the Howard Park Civic Association. And let me start off by talking about the role of a delegate. So many times we have people running for offices and we don't know the role or responsibility of the office, and they don't want to talk about it because then there's accountability that comes after that. In this case, the job of a delegate is to address the law, policy from creation, amendment, or repeal. Either creating a law, if a law already exists, doing what's called an amendment to it, or the repeal of it. Sometimes bad law is in place and we need to get that taken care of. The other side of that is the actual allocation of public revenue. The money that we pay in taxes to the state goes into a pot, that budget. And from that pot, we get to pull money for our different districts to fund the different initiatives in the communities that we live in. And so, in our communities where we don't see things happening, whether it's community driven reentry programs or just getting the streets paved from that perspective, these are just two examples of community initiatives that state funding can go towards. It is your state elected folks that should be fighting to bring money back to your district.
And
Alf, you there?
yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Yeah, they keep on trying
Yep.
to cut you out, man. They don't want to, want you to.
That's how it goes. They might be able to
Yes.
mess with the audio, but they can't mess with the picture.
Yeah.
Just look for that.
Exactly. Every time I ride up and down Hillsdale, that's Hillsdale. I think that's Hillsdale, isn't it? I
Yes,
see the
it is.
sign sitting right up there. And I see that sign there, and I'm glad to see that you're out here because I'm actually a part of that district as well. I mean, I'm
Oh, they got him. They got him. He cut out.
Yeah.
You say I cut up. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we heard you say you're
I
a part
can
of the
now.
district, but nothing after that.
Yeah. So I have a vested interest in who our elected officials is going to be. That's coming up. A little bit about what you expect here to the city, and what basically, how did you get started? Audacity to think like what they're probably thinking is to give this guy the audacity to think he can just run the delegate.
Brother Kevin, did you catch all of what he said?
No, sir. I heard. I think I didn't catch it all, but I think what he's asking you is to just let the people know exactly what it was that made you want to run for delegate.
Got you. Thank you. So initially, one, is like you said earlier, I come from these communities. You see over years and decades, you see these dynamics. We live them, we actually experience them. I'm a black man that goes through everything black men and black people in general have been going through in Baltimore City. Over time, I started with a radio show. I actually started out taking criminal law and having some of the things that we see with the gun trace task force and these different things. It happened to me. But my perspective was different as somebody who took criminal law while these things are being done to me. Now, to be clear and transparent, I knew what was going on around me. But when you're in an environment where it's prevalent, just because you're in the environment doesn't make you guilty of everything that you're accused of and you can be chased down and arrested for. So my perspective as an advocate became one that I want to educate my community on how law comes about, how law is put in place, what the role of the citizen is within a democracy, and how we can participate. So I started a radio show on the AM side during the time when Tyrone West was murdered. And I began to get into these issues. The fact that there was no women's pre-release center in the state of Maryland and in Baltimore City anymore. A lot of these issues we covered on my show. And we were always having elected officials on or elected representatives, I prefer to call them, in trying to address some of these issues. And it was odd to me that we were having to bring issues to people who often, number one, didn't know about the issue, or number two, didn't care. If you care, you should know, and if you know, you should care. So when I realized that, we keep asking people to care about us who don't care about us, why should I keep going to yell up at a castle when instead I can get in the castle and start to advocate for my community? In fact, once I get in, meet me at the back door, if you know how we used to do with the movies. I don't mind buying a ticket. I don't mind paying the $5 if I got it. Y'all meet me at the back door. We're gonna all end up in here where we can do something about some of this work. So it progressed from being a vocal, from just having a radio show and having a platform to expose some of the issues, to growing into becoming a vocal advocate, with a platform to expose some of the issues. I started testifying on different things in City Hall, and then going out to Annapolis, to me realizing why I think that I am one of the best representatives. I don't need to be the best, but I feel like I'm one of the best representatives for this district, with the issues that are going on in this city that I've been trying to address now for over 10 years easily.
Look like his lips moving. I guess there you go. We
Yeah.
not we not catching you. I don't know. Al, can you hear us?
So
Well, well, yeah. I don't know what's going on with him, but I
I
mean,
was gonna
I
say,
could.
if the audience, if I was just gonna say, if the audience can hear us, go ahead, brother, introduce
Yeah.
yourself.
Okay. Well, yeah. I'm Kevin Moody. I'm of Ask Moody Consulting Agency. Ask Moody Consulting Agency. Um, it's a little bit of everything. I started it with just financial literacy and wanting to teach the community, teaching the people in our community about financial literacy, but it's turned into me being, more or less like a motivational speaker as well, because I have a story and I got plenty of stories to share with people. Um, I just say I'm a motivational educator because every story that I tell is to teach you something. It's for people to learn from it, right? So listen to what you were saying. I feel you because my day job is I'm a police officer. The area that we have statewide jurisdiction, but the area that you're running in is that's where I'm sitting at right now, where my district is, right?
Mhm.
Um, I get to see people every day who is going through the struggle. You know, I see people who, maybe breaking the law, committing crimes, but when you really sit down and you have a conversation with them, you understand that it's because they don't have another choice. It's a lot of things that we have against us, um, as black people, as black men, and then when you do get tied up in that web of, you make a mistake and then, you got the odds stacked against you. If you get incarcerated and then you come home because I saw that you were instrumental in the bill being passed of ex convicts or ex felons being able to vote.
Mhm.
Um, and that's important. I get out of jail and I have to get a job, but nobody will hire me because of my record. I also saw what you did. What do you have a nonprofit? I thought that you would speak on that, but I definitely wanted to ask you about that because that's kind of, with the financial literacy piece, what I want to teach to the community. I personally want to focus on the children getting into the
Mhm.
schools, and that's what I've been doing. But I already know that, I mean, shoot, I'm talking to adults all the time. With financial literacy, is things that you could do to teach people. A lot of people who have records really don't have bad credit.
Mhm.
They just need to know how to structure their credit so that they can leverage their credit and they can They can go to get with your organization, get their CDL, learn how to drive trucks, and then you get your credit right. You could buy your own truck.
Yeah. So with our program, and thank you for that lead in. Um, with our program, my reentry program first is called the Lazarus Rite. If anybody's familiar with the story of Lazarus in the Bible, the Lazarus Rite. That's RITE if you Google us. And what our program is an academic reentry program. And the reason I call it that is because we have some core classes, 100 level for anybody who's been to college, 100 level, basic level classes that go into some civics, some ethics. We take people who come into the program, sometimes sentenced by a court to come to us. And they come in saying, I don't care nothing about politics. And I get it. But we often overlook our already involvement in politics. So if they've been incarcerated and they walk in the yard, they know when a certain group of dudes is walking together and talking real low, they know what's going on over there. We talk about hood politics and we understand the role of hood politics and we absolutely respect it because we know how it can change our dynamic, our community instantly. But when it comes to political politics, we say we don't want anything to do with that. A lot of times we don't understand that politics controls the environment that we live in. You, as a policy enforcer, as a police officer, um, understand the role of politics because, again, those policies dictate your everyday work environment. Uh, I tell people all the time, politicians shape policy that's enforced by the police. We can say
Hmm.
all day long, we don't care about politics. Let you not move your car from one side of the street to the other so you can get street cleaning. You know you're going to get that ticket. Let
Hmm.
you not pay your child support on time. You know about them arrears. All of these things come through the political process. So it's in our interest to select people to represent us in that process who, number one, like you just pointed out, understand our dynamics. It's not saying, oh, it makes it okay. But if you come from a background where you haven't had opportunities, the one thing that you know from birth is survival. And then what you'll do to survive needs to be understood. Again, doesn't need to be accepted. It needs to be understood if we're really going to help you make the transition to handle how you see things in a way that's acceptable to the overall society. So without trying to go too much into the weeds, it's just about selecting people who understand where we come from, what's going on, and how to best help us advance as we move through this thing called life. Because the other side of what the role is about, I talked about the policy, the law side. The other side is the allocation, the fiscal allocation. And I mentioned bringing that money back to our communities for the initiatives that we need. So whether it be a reentry program, for as much as we talk about reentry criminal justice reform in Maryland, you can't point to any significant number on the line item budget that's been allocated to it. But the police still get in Baltimore City the overwhelming amount of the budget. So what does that look like from a state level? Is public safety being invested in as much as we say they should, versus are we actually putting money in the state school system and carving out money for continuing adult education? We always talk about K through 12, and it's very important. K through 12 is important, but education is supposed to be a part of life experience. It's not supposed to be a one-time dynamic where you go to a school and a school building and okay, now you're educated. No, this is something that's supposed to continue throughout our lives. And so are we talking about continuing adult education as much? Are we are we talking about continuing adult education as much? Are we including that in line item allocations? And are we bringing that money directly back to the community and putting it to direct organizations? I'll tell you that my organization, oh, yeah, we got an award from the governor, or we've gotten an award from the mayor, or we've gotten this, that, and that. We get $0. $0. I'm gonna say that again. We get $0 allocated to our program for what we do. And like I said, we train people for their CDL license. There's several other organizations that say we do CDL training. They train them to get the permit. if you come through our doors with nothing, when you leave, you will leave with a CDL license, because after our academic curriculum, then now that I've changed your mindset and your heart, now I need to give you an economic opportunity so that you can actualize these changes that you've made in the classroom. And so when you get your CDL license, now you can drive trucks, you can drive buses. But we've also, this year, this is our 7th year in existence, we've expanded into heavy equipment operation. The reason we did that is because how I make money for myself, I do not make money through our nonprofit. I want to say that again. I do not make money through our nonprofit, not because I can't, but because I refuse to. If I'm making money off of our conditions and our conditions are not good, then I'm no different from enslavers or anybody else back in the days that would make money off of someone's condition. I'm not doing that. I make money from trucking. I own my own tractor trailers. And I know in trucking, which I've been in now for going on 20 years, I started out in the waste industry, driving trash trucks. I have no shame in that. I love working in the waste industry, from a rear load truck to a roll off truck to a front load truck. Um, what I learned in the waste industry about the business was, number one, when I got in their trucks, so I'm learning on their dime, was to treat their trucks as if it was my business. Learn on someone else's dime. So when I got in these trucks and I'm treating this route, not like I'm a company worker, no, I'm treating this as if it's my own business. So I'm learning how to do the sales calls and how to increase. Oh, you got a trash can? We're going to make sure we get you a recycle can. And now in the course of that, I'm getting more money on my check because I've increased the productivity of the company. I learned the business. Everybody had, through these phones and media, we have this want to be the boss and everything without thinking that there's a learning process in there. Learn on someone else's dime. And then you might find that, hey, you know what? This is a good company to actually stay with. There's nothing wrong with being an employee. But if you want to be your own boss, you want to be an entrepreneur, there's nothing wrong with that. But arm yourself with the knowledge that you need to have in order to succeed. So, with these companies that I worked for, I learned what it was to be in business. I started my own trucking company. I got one tractor, and then I got two. Um, and that trucking business, transportation, let me say transportation, because obviously that includes more than just trucking. Transportation and logistics is uh, the, in my opinion, the most important business to Baltimore City that is least talked about, because number one, they care the least about the background. Number two, you do not need a college background to be in transportation and logistics. You could have dropped out and you can be successful in transportation and logistics. And number three, Baltimore is the most uniquely situated city in the entire country geographically, because we have access to 95, which obviously takes you north and south on the East Coast, but also 70, which will take you all the way west, through Colorado to Arizona and on to California. We also have access to now a deeper port, so that there's more tonnage coming in by ship and rail, so that we have access. We can take material off of a ship, put it right on rail. But everything around you, wherever you're sitting right now, everything around you, when you get to another location, touches a truck at some point in its existence. And we don't take enough advantage of that, because our elected representatives right now all represent education, um, or unions. Unions are necessary in labor, but to have elected representatives that all come through working for a union or working as a teacher, doesn't do enough to represent the full breadth of what backgrounds people in Baltimore City bring to the labor force. And unfortunately, we're seeing the results of that right now. We used to talk so much about Bethlehem Steel, and when Bethlehem Steel allowed poor white people in different parts of the city to actually buy homes, buy a boat, go on vacation, and live a good life, where they were able actually to pass on some 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 some
Wealth.
family wealth to their generations. But what we forget is that while that company is no longer here, Bethlehem Steel, all of those trades are necessary. The welding, the truck driving, the you name it. Everything that that company did to create those products is still here. And we're not taking advantage of it because our elected class right now just doesn't seem to get it.
Yeah, I tell you what, personally, just with everything you were saying about the trucks, one thing that I feel like people always forget to say is with everything that you said is that it's recession proof.
Yep.
It makes the world go round. Transportation, period. I didn't had a million jobs. Another one that I worked. I worked for the railroad. I was a conductor for a freight railroad. Like you said, Bethlehem still been shut down. We were still dropping off hoppers. Or still, I don't know what they was doing with it or what, but we went to
Yep.
Bethlehem still, and we were still dropping off steel out there. Transportation, like you said, you were saying truck. You said transportation is recession proof. So that's another thing. You don't need the degree. They ain't checking the background, and you're gonna always have work.
That's right. And you know what? While it's recession proof, it's also pandemic proof. At the height of COVID, when people were in their homes, the only thing that was on the road were tractor trailers.
Oh yeah. So I feel like with what you said and what you was teaching, and that's pretty much what I like to focus on before teaching anything, is mindset. People don't know and don't realize how important something is. Like you said, with the politics and this and that. Again, I'm outside, and people have questions of why why can this happen, but that can't happen. I'm like, literally, it's the law. I don't have
Hmm.
anything to do with that. And they want to know more about why I don't. I'm like, I don't make the laws.
Well, it's so let me start from I'm going to go into what we talk about in my classroom just a little bit. The
Mhm.
political science history of why are we a quote unquote democracy. For the people out there who will say we're not a democracy, we're a republic. We can deal with that. But let's just start right here. Why did we choose to be a democracy? We could have been an aristocracy. We could have been a plutocracy. There's different forms of governance that we could have been. And this was chosen. At first, they wanted George Washington to be the king, a monarchy. But then they said, no, that's what we just ran from. Now, the we at that time were white folks that were establishing this country as the colonies. And so they wanted to make sure that they could all participate in this form of governance without one person being in charge, that they could all participate. But when we talk about the democracy, and this all comes from Greece, Athens, Greece, the only way, to measure things, you have to have a comparable to know how much your house is worth. You have to have comps. How much of the houses around you worth? For a 6 footer, for 6 feet to be impressive, you got to have some 5 footers around. For us to be a citizen is only impressive because in Athens, Greece at that time, they also had slaves. So while a citizen in a democracy had all of the access, you could vote on policy. This is way back then. It's a policy based form of governance. Who makes the law? We, the people, as participating in and running for office to be a representative, those were the people involved. The problem is the we, the people, were white male property owners at that time. Property to include not just land, but slaves. That's how we
Mhm.
got here. If we don't understand that right now in 2022 as the basis of why we have to participate for our own protection, if nothing else, if not even for our own advancement, just for our own protection, first and foremost. Let's talk about the Second Amendment, the right to own a firearm. At nowhere in the law is that right abridged or made less than. So how is it that if you're convicted of a felony, once you're released, once you've completed all your parole and probation, how is it that you can no longer protect yourself, your property, and your family in your home? You have the right to be a single parent. Doesn't your child have the right to be protected? So, what is behind all of this is the controlling of certain people, us black folks in particular, within a society that was set up from a white supremacist construction on maintaining who has all of the rights, who has all of the protections, and who maintains the standard in this country. Again, when we participate, number one, we protect ourselves. And number two, we make way for us to advance in this society. I think I'm the best representative in the 41st district because no one talks about this stuff. No one wants to educate us. You don't want to get all this information on your porch when I walk up. But if you give me the opportunity, I'm going to educate you. I want to do this in community association settings. This should be going on throughout the year. I'm the representative, but I'm not telling you what's going on in Annapolis. How am I representing you if I'm not listening to you, number one, and then number two, reporting back to you after I've gone back to Annapolis? We see people taking advantage of us, not representing us. There's a difference. They're using our numbers to get in office, and then they only want to represent those pockets of the city that actually fund their campaigns. That's a big problem.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna tell you something else that I've seen to be a problem from, again, at work, dealing with different people, and it's something that you mentioned earlier, though. Child support. It's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times that people get put in certain situations where they don't have a choice but to revert to a certain
Mm-hmm.
type of life. These numbers that get thrown out there that people have to pay, and just what I mean, just how they come up with it, just putting a number into the system and saying the computer said,
That's right.
and knowing that something that I notice with it is, everywhere you go, if I go to get a house, I go to get a car, they are determining how much you can afford based off of what you bring home after taxes.
Right.
Child support, they looking at the number before taxes. And then
That's
if you
right.
say, hey, last year we had well, let's say us, okay, it was a pandemic, so we had to come to work. We had to work extra
Mm-hmm.
hours. So that's not guaranteed that I'm gonna do that. And the judge tell you
Mm-hmm.
figure it out.
That's right. The entire system is crafted, maintained, and scrutinized, um, to again maintain this. It stands on our backs. Predominantly across the board, you have white men who don't have to go through some of the hoops that we have to go through. So even to get a job, um, when we don't factor in the transportation costs to get to and from the job, we see people all the time that what they make in their check after all fines, fees, penalties, and everything else comes out, there's nothing left for them,
Hmm.
and we don't understand how overall this hurts the child. It doesn't make sense to me to hurt the child in the course of supposedly providing for the child. It just doesn't make sense. And that's why that the issue with the Second Amendment stands out to me so much. We any individual has the right to be a parent, but if you have formally been convicted, you somehow lose the right to protect the child. The child loses the right to be protected. That that doesn't make any sense
Hey,
when you think about the communities where
Cat,
people who have been convicted will live. They are most likely to live in a community where they will need to be able to protect themselves. And when
Absolutely.
it comes to protection, it seems to be an area almost exclusively dominated, or conversation almost exclusively occupied by white men who are the most protected people under policy to date.
Hmm.
So
And again,
mhm,
and again, don't know and understand where we come from. So we need people who look like us. Again, when came into this line of work, it was actually the day I had my polygraph test was the day that the riot started. And that
okay,
didn't scare me. That made me be like, you need to do it. It needs to
that's
be
right.
more people who look like me, who knows, what I mean? I could be standing down there and be talking to somebody and they say something to me where somebody who, we had the guys who, from Pennsylvania, not really from here, looking at it, taking it as a form of disrespect, but it's the furthest thing from it. We need
That's
people
right.
who look like us, who understand us, who really can protect us.
Well, it's funny. The narratives and how we discuss policing, um, how we move these conversations is very different from the narratives around global security. And what I'm getting at is, so I was in the infantry in the Marine Corps, and when you talk to people who work with some of these alphabet agencies, um, at the federal level, they recruit people who have backgrounds. They don't run
Yeah.
from them or push them to the side. They actually recruit them because they know that there's a wealth of knowledge. These same organizations, they actually recruit. They actively follow and recruit hackers.
Yes.
People who've even been convicted of hacking, because if you're so good at your craft, we want your knowledge among our group. But at the local levels, when it comes to policing, and in different instances, again, obviously, I get it. Clearly, you don't want a mass murderer to turn around and be a protector of your society. I get it. But again, there are going to be areas of expertise that the community can actually benefit from the knowledge that a person might have because of their previous life. It's just very funny that we don't even talk about, again, how policing historically, yes, we know how it started and what it's about, but just the overall maintenance of this structure of who is protected versus who is not protected, who is used as the fuel for this country, almost like in a locomotive. You see those old cartoons where they shoveling coal into the thing for the locomotive to go. But the bodies of black people within the criminal justice system maintain the business that is America is a business. All of this stuff that's a country, it is a business, it is a global business. And the fuel for this business has been black people as slaves, as slaves within the criminal justice system. If you think about if the criminal justice system alone collapsed, we watch the NASDAQ and all of these things on a daily basis. But if the criminal justice system alone collapse from the standpoint of people just stopping crime. Think about, so initially slave codes became black codes, and black codes transformed into the Jim Crow laws. I'm not saying that people don't get caught. I'm saying, let's
Can y'all
say that
hear me?
people didn't commit crime. Yes, we can.
Yeah. Can you hear us?